everybody, this is General Spear, otherwise known as, of course, Christopher, and welcome back to the channel here on General Spear Creates. If you're following along with the build, great job so far. Of course, in the last episode, we have completed the forearms, the hand plates, the biceps, and the shoulder bells, thus completing the arm system. Absolutely fantastic, and if you're following along, great. You will have a couple more pieces to follow along with today in what we're going to do. And today we're going to be completing, or not completing, but rather assembling the torso armor. And that's going to include the chest plate, the back plate, the abdomen section, both front and back, and the cod section for both the front and the back. So that's going to be a lot of fun to do. Couple of things that we need to go over first. First off, kind of something that we haven't really talked about in this entire series so far, that's actually going to be kind of crucial in the measurements of this particular video. Today we're just, of course, measuring out our pieces and how they're going to fit on our body, but there's one aspect of this build that we need to talk about before we go ahead and do that. So, this kind of gets into planning ahead, and what this involves is actually convention safety, and particularly for your own persons. What this involves is pretty much what can actually happen quite often at a convention if you're not prepared or planning ahead is actually the risk of overheating. With a lot of costumes and whatnot, especially if they're like, you know, not that elaborate, or they're kind of just simple, you don't have to worry about this so much. But for full body costumes such as what we're building, you definitely have to take into consideration how hot you might get. For me, I run a little bit hotter than a lot of other guys. That's just the nature of people, or of guys in general, because, testosterone. But out on a convention floor, even though it might be air conditioned inside, it's a lot of bodies moving around. It's a lot of people moving around, and you're walking around in a full body costume from head to toe with very little to no ventilation whatsoever. So there are definitely going to be parts in which you're going to need to take precaution in order to stay cool and comfortable, and such that you don't risk heat stroke, because that can be bad. Because having to pull all that armor off such that you cool down on a convention floor, that might be something that you may not wish to do in terms of, or even risk basically, but it's going to be needed for your own safety. So what are the alternatives? Well, I'm glad you asked. Well, I'm going to tell you anyways, but there are things that you can do to your armor and things within your armor to help keep you cool, comfortable, and safe. First of which, of course, is going to be actually discussed at a later video, and it's going to involve the helmet, and specifically the ventilation/fan system that we'll put in that. That's one part. But the part that we're going to discuss today, for today's build video, is in fact the ice vest. This is a simple system by which you can wear underneath your armor, underneath your undersuit, so that's not exposed to the outside world, and it also keeps you cool. This is a crucial item, I think, in any cosplayer setup, basically, especially if you're doing a lot of full body gear, to have in your repertoire. The particular ice vest that I got for myself is from a place called Glacier Tech. Now, these ice vests tend to run anywhere between $80 and $200, depending on setup. I haven't looked at the website in a while, so that price variance may change. But even on the low end, while that may seem expensive for a lot of people, it is an option for you to get. And you really should think about getting, especially if you're getting into the world of cosplay and you have plans to do full body gear. For me in particular, I already have a clone trooper in that of ARC Trooper Havoc from the Clone Wars. We're of course working on the Kenobi armor now. I got a few more clones lined up, and I also have working on, in the behind the scenes scenario, of a full Darth Vader setup as well. So a lot of full body costumes to definitely take place. of which, of course, are going to need some kind of ventilation and cooling system. So an ice vest in this case is invaluable, even if it is expensive. And of course, I've already kind of gotten the overall dimensions of what I'm going to do, so I, in particular, don't need to worry about where this armor is going to place on me because I've already done the steps before, so I know roughly what to expect. But for you, what you may want to do is you may want to actually get yourself an ice vest and have that on, have on your undersuit top, and then do the armor over that, because the ice vest does add a little bit of padding and whatnot. And so you may want to consider those options, especially when you, when you are concerned about safety and wanting to also make it look good and functional. But for me in particular, I don't need to worry about that, like I said, because I already know those measurements of what I need to allow for and everything. The ice vest that I got has basically pockets on the front section here and on the back, allowing for multiple ice packs for either side. Now, for me in particular, I have more of a preference to wear the packs on the front, just because I like that. So it's really personal preference, but as long as you have some sort of cooling system, that's absolutely awesome. There are some systems out there that are very elaborate, though. Like if they have a full undersuit, they'll actually have like tubes and whatever else running through the entire apparatus, almost like a cooled bloodstream, if you will, that runs on the underside of the undersuits all throughout. They can get pretty sophisticated and elaborate, but a simple ice vest is all you need. And of course, like I said, we'll talk about the fan system inside the helmet at a later date as well. But for today, we're going to get started on the build. And so what we're going to need are as follows. Of course, you're going to need the chest plate, the back plate, the abdomen section halves, and you're also going to need the cod section. A little disclaimer about the cod section. You'll have noticed in the unboxing video for the cod section that there is a piece that's attached to both halves. And in fact, those are the parts of the belts. They're, for the animated kit, they are attached to the halves itself. And such that, the belts can, kind of go over the abdomen and whatever else. For the purposes of this video, however, we are not going to do anything in particular to the belt. We're just going to treat it as if it's part of the cod section, but we're not going to see this whole lot. The reason being is because we're actually going to fabricate our own belts, probably either in the next video or the video after. The reason being is because when I put on the robes for the Obi Wan outfit, of course, which we'll later fabricate, the robes are in such a way that the belt is the only armor piece that actually goes all over the robes. Everything else, in terms of the robes itself, goes over the rest of the armor. And so what I want to do is, regards to the belt, I want to put the pouches on the belt, I want to put the detonator on it. I can't do that if it's on this particular layer. Of course, I could detach this if I wanted to, but say I wanted to go out as a clone trooper grunt and see if I could maybe do this as a 501st piece. I could have that belt that I have that's detachable able to go over these guys. I don't know how well that's going to work, but we'll see how that goes. So what we're going to do today, of course, is we're going to be starting off with our pieces and doing some trimming. For this, you're going to need some scissors. You're also going to need your trusty Dremel, because there are some pieces that are thick enough to where a Dremel is more perfect than a pair of scissors. Of course, you're also going to need some sandpaper or some sanding blocks, and probably also a little bit of the usage of the belt sander, possibly as well, just to clean up some edges. One of the things that we're also going to do afterwards is kind of just figure out whether or not we're going to be doing shims or whatnot. And for showing that, hold on a second. So this is my chest plate for my ARC Trooper Havoc armor. It's all pretty much painted up and pretty much sealed. And what I have on the inside here, if I can get this open, I have some what are called butted seams that I have on the chest armor. This is very common for clone troopers to have. I think it's fairly common for a lot of the troopers to have. And behind it, I have what's called a shim. And then if I can remove that real quick. All it is a piece of plastic with a piece of Velcro on it. And there's Velcro on the insides of the armor itself. This is a fairly sophisticated system. It's actually quite strong and it keeps the pieces relatively together. But what I want to do is I want to utilize the system that's already installed in the set from Captain Weir. To do that, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the chest pieces real quick. So, for the chest piece, there's a lot of trimming that we're going to have involved in each piece. But for the chest piece in particular, there is a line kind of right here. It's a little bit faded. It's a little bit better on this side, I believe. There's a faded line right in there, as you can tell. We're actually going to cut that line off physically because I know from past experience from my ARC Trooper build that for me in particular, cutting this line off and having it flush against the edge of the back plate here is actually pretty good for me. You may have to adjust this for you, but for me, that's a pretty good line. And what I want to do is because there's already a flap that extends out from the back plate itself, what I'm actually going to do is leave this, I'm going to trim it up so that there's not this edge right here, so I can rest it flat against the armor section here, and put a piece of Velcro along here such that that will be my shim, so to speak. I don't know how well this is going to work because there's a little less surface area than I would have with a shim, but that hopefully will create a nice butted seam basically along the edges there. There is a lot of trimming involved that we're going to have to do. Like I said, some of this can be taken out with scissors, but we might need to also use the Dremel. And speaking of which, in the last episode, there was a lot of camera shaking, and I do apologize for that. Part of that was not me noticing that. So in this video, I'll be sure to have different camera angles such that you guys aren't looking at a shaky video. So we're going to go ahead and trim up our pieces, and then we'll get ready for the next part. See you in a second. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, after you've got all those pieces trimmed up, now, of course, is the time to begin to fit the pieces together. Easiest way to do that, of course, is to put the pieces on your body, but also getting yourself a little bit of tape to hold the pieces in place. And then, of course, if you need to make any adjustments or measurements or cuts, taking a Sharpie or some sort of pen, basically, or pencil, it doesn't matter, some sort of writing utensil to basically make some marks as to where you need to cut stuff up. Now, for me, when I did my Arc Trooper Havoc armor, I didn't really need to make that a whole bunch of adjustments for cutting pieces and whatnot. Everything actually fit pretty snug and pretty well for me. But for you, you may need to either cut more, you may even need to extend some flaps, depending on what you need to do. But basically, go ahead and make some adjustments, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so I've slowed down the video to talk about one part that we're going to get into here in a few moments, and that's going to be for the chest and the back plates. You'll notice that there are some tabs on the top portions where the shoulders are. These are actually going to be secured down permanently with the shoulder straps that we will install, of course, here in a few moments. There might be a little bit of trimming to do to make sure that this is all flush. But for right now, go ahead and just put these at where they need to be, which is actually going to be right here. And I'm going to put those on before putting on the armor or putting on this over and everything. But so far, this is fitting pretty well so far. It's not too snug. If I needed to get an ice vest in here, I totally could, no problem whatsoever. So I think as far as the adjustments and everything go, this is actually a pretty good fit for me. The clone armor tends to be a little bit snug than most. So that is something that you are going to need to address for your own persons. So this will almost be all set to go. I'm going to need a few more pieces of tape. It's good to have the tape kind of on standby. I've been pulling off a few pieces to make sure that they all are that they have easy access. That's how I was able to get this on by myself. Of course, definitely get somebody to help you out if need be, but for the most part, I pretty much got this on my own. Another thing that I wanted to let you all know that I did not do, but I will end up doing, and I don't need to really show this on camera, of course, you're just going to need to clean up all of the edges and whatnot. There are a lot of jagged edges on this right now. I'm not totally concerned about it at the moment. I just wanted to make sure that everything fit. And then once I made my final cuts, if need be, and then I can go in and actually trim all the edges and clean them up. So that's kind of the order of things. I'm going to get a few more pieces of tape. We'll put on the chest plate here in a minute. And this is just run-of-the-mill painter's tape. That's all it really is. It doesn't really matter what kind of tape it is, as long as it's enough to hold the pieces in place. You're definitely going to need painter's tape, depending on what kind of paint job you're going to do, because you can definitely, make this armor and then do whatever paint job you want based off of this. This is mostly going to be all white in the end, so it doesn't really matter what it's going to be, but having painter's tape just in general is always a good thing to have. And I'm just adjusting a few seams there that were coming apart. Down here are two flaps that come together at the bottom here. You don't really need to do anything to these, but they can be interesting, if not a little bit of a hassle to figure out. So that's the abdomen. That's the cod piece here with the belt already on it. Again, we're going to make our own belts, so that's not to worry. And then, of course, we have the chest plate. Alrighty. Pretty darn good. And I'm going to move the camera up here a little bit so that you all can see. All right, so that fits pretty well. I'm going to go ahead and get the sides now. Use the camera to kind of help me out here. So that's pretty good there as far as the placement goes. I have a little bit of trimming on this top edge that I'm going to need to do in order to make that flush, but that's okay. On the other side, making sure that that piece is all set. Alrighty. Whoops. Get back here. Get back in place. Alright. That's actually pretty good. That's actually pretty snug and everything. There is some trimming that I'm going to have to do and whatnot. There's a lot of work left to go. But this feels pretty good. I can move around this quite well. I actually have a pretty good range of flexibility at the moment. I'm definitely going to trim the edges and whatnot of the armor. Play around with it. But it's looking pretty good. And this is roughly what it should look like after it's all trimmed up and everything. Yeah, those seams are looking pretty good. I don't think I needed to do any adjustments at all. It all feels pretty good. Again, making sure that everything is all in place and whatnot. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. So obviously, as you can tell, you can do this yourself. You can get somebody else to help you if you want. But I'm pretty much set for the next part, which is going to be, of course, securing all of the seams, cleaning all the armor up, and whatnot. But the final part that I want to show you for today is, in fact, going to be the shoulder straps, and that's going to be the next in this next section. So I'm going to pause right here, take all the armor off, and show you what we need to do for the final part of this phase. Hello everyone, welcome back. Okay, so here's the next part, and this is basically the final part before all of the trimming and, of course, placing the Velcro. The Velcro, I mean, I can go over if need be, but it's pretty self-explanatory. You're essentially going to, after you trim all these pieces up, or at least clean up the edges, rather, you're going to place Velcro in a seam groove along here in the back plate. The same with the other back plates of the abdomen and the cod piece. And those are going to be your seams, your Velcro seams, basically. But as far as this part goes, the thing that I will show you on camera is the left and the right armor straps. There is an L and an R on the pieces. You need to trim these up. I've already done so that it kind of saves time. And essentially what we're going to do is we're going to tape these pieces back together at the shoulders. And I might need to do a little bit of trimming just to make sure that it's flush. Because what we're going to do is we're going to put these pieces together and they are going to be secured permanently at the seams of the shoulders, both the chest plate and the back plate. Assuming that I don't make a further mess of myself. Alright, so that's pretty much set to go, and I want to see how that fits. So that fits pretty darn well for the most part. So the easiest way to go about doing this is definitely going to be super gluing that edge up. We are going to need to sand the edges a little bit first, which I'm going to go ahead and do. So this is basically the first part right here. If I can get my sandpaper amongst all this mess. little bit of abrasiveness and everything, and we will reinforce the inside with some plastic as well as some foam, but you can do that in whatever configuration you want. I don't really need to show you that. You can basically just reinforce the inside to whatever system you want. We'll set these aside for right now, and we'll sand the top here. I'm going to trim this edge a little bit, like so. Okay, I'm also going to trim this edge too so it's not protruding out. That's pretty good. Let's go ahead and adjust that really, really quick. Let's see if that works. That looks like it'll work. So now what we're going to need to do is glue both halves together. And this might take a little bit of finagling, but I'm going to go ahead and do it for you here on camera, and just so you get to see what happens. What I find it better to help out first is actually going to be taping one side together and then working on the other side, and then vice versa. And the tape will also help kind of keep it there. We'll use clamps and whatnot too, just to make sure that everything stays down. And then we're going to just reinforce the heck out of everything. Because ideally, these seams should not come apart at all. If you're gonna secure these down completely like I'm going to do, they need to be, secured pretty well. This is also the only part that will eventually have the need for either epoxy clay or Bondo out of the entire torso section. So, at least as far as the bulk parts here. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and tape this up. Just to make sure it stays in place, more or less. Now on this side, we're going to go ahead and glue these down. Right in there. So let me go and get my super glue. I'm going to run a few beads right in here. You can't see it. Let me actually move the camera down a little bit so you can see a little bit better about what the process I'm doing here. Let me get my clamps ready. And that will definitely take a few minutes to dry up. And I'm also going to run a bead right in here. So that's going to set up a little. Let me move the camera again. So that's going to set up, basically take a few minutes, and I would leave it be for a bit, basically. I know this is, 5-second super glue, but for something like this, you definitely want to let it kind of just be and sit for a while. And I am also going to take some extra plastic, like I said, and reinforce the inside. And then the next part would be to take, in this case, this is the left side that we just glued. We're going to take our left side's shoulder strap. I'm going to move it back down again. We take our left side stroller strap and go ahead and actually glue that in place. Now, the placement of this is not 100% crucial. Well, it is crucial. But what we're going to do is essentially we're going to do halvesies right in the middle like so. And it's both even on both sides here, and there's basically a little bit of evenness right in the middle. So it's kind of smack dab in the middle there. This is going to be the part in which you're also going to need to Bondo together to make sure that's all flush. Ideally, there should be no seam here, and there also needs to be a sense of flushness all around the edge on the plates itself. There's also going to be a little bit of flexibility to it, and I actually want to clean this edge up a little bit more. Such that we get a little bit more curvature. The cleaner the edge, the less you'll have to Bondo and finagle in place. That looks pretty good. Let's see how that fits. Yeah, that fits a whole lot better. There's not as much bumps as there were before. I am going to clean up this edge a little bit more back here. Okay, that's pretty good right in there. So we will go ahead and we will begin gluing down our piece here. Kind of just line the edge here. And luckily I got more clamps. Can never have enough clamps for stuff like this. Okay, so we've got that bit there. And we'll go ahead and get this side as well. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is get that side. And do I have another one somewhere? I don't. Not at the moment. Not close by. So I'm going to go ahead and just do this. So that's what should happen with both sides. And then I would go ahead and basically do, I would Bondo definitely all up along the seams here. I would even go as far, let me talk to you real quick here. Back up with the camera here. I would even go as far as maybe even to Bondo the underside. This is going to be an area in which there's going to be some flexibility, but there's also going to be a lot of stress. And so you want as much reinforcement as you can. So like I said, doing some pieces of plastic underneath, doing the Bondo on the outside to make sure the seams are all welded, basically. And you're going to repeat that process for the other side. I'm not going to show it here on camera because I already showed it here. And I'm not going to show the Bondo process, but essentially you need to get in there and get all the grooves and whatnot. But that's going to essentially do it for this episode. I hope everybody enjoyed. Next episode we are going to work on, I believe, the legs, and that's going to comprise of the thighs and the shins, and I think, depending on whether I get in the shoes or not, it'll also comprise of the feet as well. which should be very exciting. That's going to do it for this particular episode, guys. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. Feel free, of course, as always, to Hulk smash that like button. Comment in the comment section below if you're new. Do not forget to subscribe. And as always, may the Force be ever in your favor and with you always.